13. Bill 7 will repeal 3 existing NWT statutes and replace them with a single new Chartered Professional Accountants Act. The bill is being coordinated with legislation in Nunavut to allow members of the newly merged body, the Chartered Professional Accountants of Northwest Territories Nunavut, known as CPA NWT/NU, to operate as one in both territories. Tonight's meeting was originally scheduled for May 25th of this year. The meeting was deferred when our law clerk brought to the attention of the committee a concern shared by the law clerk in Nunavut that Clause 2 of Bill 7 raises a significant legal matter. As drafted, the bill proposed to establish the CPA NWT-NU as a single statutory corporation rooted in both jurisdictions without stating in which jurisdiction the corporation is created or pursuant to whose laws. I'm pleased to report that our law clerk, legislative drafters in the Department of Justice, and the law clerk in Nunavut have collaborated on amendments to resolve this concern, which will be moved as motions by committee tonight. I'm further pleased to report that the Minister advised committee that the organizations amalgamated under the CPA NWT-NU have been consulted on these proposed changes and are supportive of the recommended approach. I wish to thank everyone involved in this lengthy collaborative approach to ensure we act the best and most sound legislation possible that is constitutionally viable. I will now invite the Honourable Robert C. McLeod, Minister of Finance, to introduce his staff for the record and proceed with any opening remarks you may have. Minister McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, committee. Thank you for having me here today to review Bill 7, an act to create the Chartered Professional Accountants Act. With me today is Mr. Jamie Quee, our Comptroller General, Mr. Terence Coudray, Director, Management Board Secretariat, Mike Reddy, Director of Legislation, Department of Justice, and my Ministerial Special Advisor, Mr. Rob Collinson. For over a decade, the 3 national accounting bodies, the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants, the Certified General Accountants Association of Canada, and the Certified Management Accountants of Canada, have discussed the possibility of merging their respective organizations into one comprehensive national accounting body. In January 2013, a national unification framework was agreed to by the 3 Canadian accounting bodies to create a new national body, Chartered Professional Accountants Act Canada, or CPA. Following this lead, in May 2013, the 3 professional accounting bodies of the Northwest Territories and Nunavut developed their own merger proposal to unify as a single chartered professional accounting organization. Towards these efforts, the GNWT administration has worked closely with Nunavut and the NWT Nunavut CPA Transitional Steering Committee to develop Bill 7. All 3 parties collaborated to propose legislation that contains similar content of legislation passed in other jurisdictions while recognizing the needs of small jurisdictions like the NWT and Nunavut. This joint legislation with Nunavut proposes to establish a new Chartered Professional Accountants Act in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut and provides a legislative framework for CPA NWT/Nunavut to be a self-regulating body. The 3 legacy acts, the Institute of Chartered Accountants Act, the Certified General Accountants Act, and the Society of Management Accountant Act, would subsequently be repealed upon the new CPA Act coming into force. Should the legislation be passed, the NWT and Nunavut would join all other Canadian provinces and the Yukon who have already passed similar legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Does the committee have any general comments or questions before we begin the clause-by-clause review? Yes, Mr. Simpson.
Thank you. I want to thank the work of the law clerk, our law clerk and the law clerk in Nunavut, and all the staff involved in this, because I know it was quite the undertaking, and I'm sure it's something that, I won't say it's career defining, but I'm sure it's something the law clerks will remember. And I think the way that we're probably going to do this, but I'll leave that up to the chair, of course, is that because of the way the act was drafted and there was some serious issues with it, we have a bunch of amendments, and so I'll probably just be firing them off one after the other. So I just wanted to get that out there. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson. Anything further from committee? Hearing none, does committee agree to conduct a clause-by-clause review of Bill 7, Chartered Professional Accountants Act? Thank you, committee. We'll defer the title of the bill until the end and begin with consideration of the clauses. There are 101 clauses in this bill. Does committee agree to consider the clauses in groups? Please turn to page 12 of the bill. Clause 1. Mr. Simpson.
Move that Bill 7 be amended in subclause 1.1 by striking out "and by the equivalent legislation in Nunavut" in the definition CPA, NWT, NU.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Motion's in order to the motion.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister concur with the amendment? Thank you, Minister. To clause 1 as amended. Does the committee agree? Thank you. Clauses 2 to 5. Does the committee agree? Clause 6. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that subclause 6.8 of Bill 7 be amended by striking out "the Commissioner of the Northwest Territories" and substituting "the Commissioner of the Northwest Territories on the recommendation of the Minister."
The motion's in order to the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Minister. Clause 6 as amended. Yes, Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that subclause 6.9 of Bill 7 be deleted and the following substituted: "One lay director who is neither a member nor eligible to be a member of the CPA, NWT, NU shall be appointed by the Commissioner of the Northwest Territories on the recommendation of the Minister and on the nomination of the Minister of the Government of Nunavut responsible for the Chartered Professional Accountants Act in Nunavut to represent the public of Nunavut."
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. The motion's in order to the motion.
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister concur with the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 6 as amended. Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that subclause 6.11 of Bill 7 be amended by striking out "or of the equivalent legislation in Nunavut." Thank you.
Motion's in order to the motion.
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister concur with the amendment?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 6 as amended. Does committee agree?
Agreed.
Thank you, committee. To clauses 7 through 16. Does committee agree? Clause 17. Does committee agree? Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Bill 7 be amended by deleting subclause 17.3 and substituting the following: "The register may, on reasonable notice to the registrar, be inspected by members of the public." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. The motion's in order to the motion.
Question.
Question has been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause, clause 17 is amended. Does committee agree? Clauses 18 through 20. Does committee agree? Clause 21. Does committee agree? Mr. Simpson.
I move that Bill 7 be amended in paragraph 21C by striking out "the nature of which is relevant to his or her suitability to engage in the practice of the profession."
Sorry, just a moment, Mr. Simpson. I think you're ahead of yourself. What amendment is this? Mr. Simpson, would you like to withdraw your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to withdraw that motion, and I'd like to move that clause 21 of Bill 7 be amended by striking out "and" at the end of paragraph B and substituting "or."
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. Your prior motion's withdrawn from the record, and this motion is now in order and under consideration by committee. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Thank you, committee. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment? Minister McLeod.
Yes, we do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 21 as amended. Does committee agree? Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Bill 7 be amended in paragraph 21C by striking out "the nature of which is relevant to his or her suitability to engage in the practice of the profession."
Motion is in order. To the motion.
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 21 as amended, does committee agree? Thank you, committee. Clauses 22 through 29, does committee agree? Clause 30, does committee agree? Mr. Simpson.
Mr. Chair, I move that Bill 7 be amended by deleting subclause 32. Just for clarification, that's 30 brackets 2, and substituting the following. The board shall make publicly available the rules of professional conduct and any requirements, standards, codes of conduct, or rules referred to in subsection 3.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. The motion's in order. To the motion.
Question?
Question's been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 30 as amended, does committee agree? Clauses 31 through 40, does committee agree? Clauses 41 through 49, does committee agree? Clause 50, does committee agree? Mr. Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Bill 7 be amended by deleting subclause 50 brackets 1 and substituting the following. The discipline committee established under subsection 8 brackets 1 is composed of at least 3 members appointed by the board, including A, at least 1 person who is a member of the CPA, NWT, NU, B, at least 1 lay director or some other person who is neither a member nor eligible to be a member of the CPA, NWT, NU, and C, if necessary, 1 person who is eligible to engage in the practice of the profession in a province or another territory. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. The motion's in order. To the motion.
Question?
Questions have been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Minister, do you concur with this amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 50 as amended, does committee agree? Clauses 51 through 55, does committee agree? Clause 56, Mr. Simpson.
I move that subclause 56 brackets 4 of Bill 7 be amended by striking out publicly available and substituting publicly available where subject to ensuring the confidentiality of the portion of the record of the hearing entered during a closed portion of the hearing in accordance with subsection 54 brackets 2.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. The motion is in order. To the motion.
Question?
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Does the minister?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. 56 is amended. Does committee agree? Clauses 57 through 70, does committee agree? Clauses 71 through 80, does committee agree? Clauses 81 through 83, does committee agree? Clause 84, does committee agree? Mr. Simpson.
I move that clause 84 of Bill 7 be deleted.
Motion's in order. To the motion.
Question?
Question has been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Minister, do you concur?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 84 as amended, does committee agree? Clause 85. Mr. Simpson.
I move that clause 85 of Bill 7 be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. The motion's in order. To the motion.
Question?
Question's been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Does the minister concur with this amendment?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. To clause 85 as amended, does committee agree? Clauses 86 through 90, does committee agree? Clauses 91 through 101, does committee agree? Thank you, committee. We'll now return to bill number and title. Bill 7, Chartered Professional Accountants Act. Does committee agree? Does committee agree that Bill 7, Chartered Professional Accountants Act, is now ready for consideration in committee of the whole as amended? Mr. Simpson?
Thank you. I move that Bill 7, Chartered Professional Accountants Act, be reported to the Assembly as ready for consideration in committee of the whole as amended and reprinted.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. The motion's in order. Motion's on the floor. To the motion. Question has been called. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Bill 7, Chartered Professional Accountants Act, will be reported to the Assembly as ready for consideration in committee of the whole as amended and reprinted. Thank you, Minister McLeod. Thank you to your officials. Thank you for everyone who joined us this evening. We are adjourned.